Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And yeah, it's been a while since I've been able to record content in this format, but we are in November, as what that means as a Calgary sports fan and CFL fan. Another on the road to the Grey Cup is upon us. Yeah, so for this video, we're going to be taking a look at the East semifinal. That will be happening on Saturday, November the 1st in 2025. But before I get into that, if you want to follow along this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I have my other social media links down in the description below. So what I've done the last few years, most of the time, is going to be a little late to finally upload it because, you know, I'm busy without saying I'm busy. We're going to preview the 5 games. The East semifinal, West semifinal, I'll do in the second video, and then next week I'll do the East and West final. And then 2 weeks from now, for ahead of Sunday, November the 16th, the big game, the 112th Grey Cup, will be played in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Princess Iowa Stadium. So bring up my notes and let's preview first the East semi-final, as we got the East Division colors up. So for the East semi-final preview, you got the Montreal Alouettes hosting the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will explain why they're out east for this game as they cross over. As I mentioned, kickoff for this game will be on Saturday, November the 1st. It will be a 1 or 12 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff for 2 in Eastern Time Zone in Montreal at Percival Molson Stadium. And they moved up the games an hour later than usual because there's another big game happening today. The World Series, Game 7 against the Toronto Blue Jays and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Let's go Jays, let's bring home the World Series. But back to the football game at hand. How this matchup breakdown is that the Montreal Alouettes, they were second in the East Division. They had a 10-8 record overall. However, they had an up and down season, mostly because of Davis Alexander being hurt in the middle of the season. But Montreal, they were 4-5 at home this season, but they were a strong 6-2 versus the East. However, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they were 4th in the West Division, but they got to cross over because in the CFL, if you have a 4th place team in one division have a greater record than the 3rd place team in the same division, that team comes over and claims that spot. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they were also 10-8, but they were 4th in the West Division. They were, however, 3-6 on the road this season, but they actually were 6-2 versus the East Division, and season series could also make this interesting how to break this down. Put in perspective how strong the West Division was. The last place team that finished 5th in the West Division was the Edmonton Elks. They were 7-11. Weren't saying oh thank heaven in that case with the convenience store. But the 3rd place team in the East was the defending Grey Cup champions, which they didn't make the playoffs, so we're going to have a new champion this season. They were 5-13. Well, the Ottawa Redblacks, they were 4-14, so 10-8 is greater than 5-13. So that's why Winnipeg crosses over. Season series, well, these two teams played twice in the regular season. Let's go back to week 12. This was on Thursday, August the 21st, and this is when the Montreal Alouettes were struggling. And at one point, I think his last name was James, if I remember. They were down to like their 4th or 5th string quarterback. Well, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they defeated the Montreal Alouettes 26-13 on that day. So Davis Alexander was still out with an injury. And then the second game happened to be the last game of the regular season last week, where the Winnipeg Blue Bombers could have still had something to play for on Saturday, October 21st, or 25th I meant to say, in week 21, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at home defeated the Montreal Alouettes 19-10. So Winnipeg actually won both games against the Montreal Alouettes. I'll footnote it a little that, Winnipeg also had an up and down season, that they were in week 12, they were without Davis Alexander, and in week 21, Montreal knew their playoff fate, so they didn't field their best roster. So that could play a role. I'm going to say my decision and prediction who I think will win this one. And as mentioned, the winner of this one will take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats next Saturday, on Saturday, November 8th. This will go back to their regular time at 11 a.m. Mountain Time or 1 p.m. Eastern at Tim Hortons Field. So now this part of the video will share the last playoff win for either team. And actually, interestingly, this is the rematch of the 110th Grey Cup. And that was the last game the Montreal Alouettes won in 2023. It was the 110th Grey Cup, which was played in Hamilton. And the Montreal Alouettes, they won that one 20-24 in a big upset for that one. So Montreal's looking for their first playoff win in a couple years. Well, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they could make history both twice if they get to the Grey Cup, because no crossover team has never been to the Grey Cup, and I don't think a team has made it to the Grey Cup 6 straight years. Because keep in mind, Winnipeg has been in the Grey Cup the last 5 years, so their last win was last year's West Final when they defeated the Saskatchewan Roughriders 38-22 at home. So not long playoff droughts for either team looking for their first playoff win. And I always take a look at playoff history. Look at the last 3 games, and there's a couple times that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were in the East Division as a placeholder team. Years when Ottawa wasn't in the league or Montreal wasn't in the league, if you go back in the era from 1987 to 1995. But playoff history, well, as mentioned, this is the first time these two teams have played each other since the Grey Cup a couple of years ago, where the 110th Grey Cup in Hamilton, where Montreal won that one 28-24. Then the game before that, you'd have to go back to the 2007 East semifinal. Ottawa was not in the league at the time, so Winnipeg was in the East Division, and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers actually won that game 24-22 at home, where eventually Winnipeg played Saskatchewan for the Grey Cup that year, and Saskatchewan won it. And then if you go all the way back to the 2000 East Final, the Montreal Alouettes defeated the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 35-24 when Winnipeg was in the East, because Ottawa wasn't in the league at the time. Ultimately, for that one, the Montreal Alouettes came here because Calgary hosted the Grey Cup in 2000, but then Montreal got upset by the BC Lions. So, interesting playoff history, but let's just say 2 years later, the rematch of the Grey Cup, where Winnipeg was upset by the Winnipeg or Montreal Alouettes. So now let's take a look at the who's got the edge. And I'm going to say the edge definitely favors the Montreal Alouettes in the quarterback and receivers. I meant to say Davis Alexander, he's 11-0 as a starter in the CFL. And then I say with Austin Mack, Cole Speaker, and you got Corey Philpott. I'm going to say Montreal is stacked at receivers, and Davis Alexander, they able to pick up big numbers. I'm going to say Davis Alexander alone has the edge over Zach Claros. This could be, the legend versus the young guy. Because Davis Alexander, I'm going to say, reminds me a lot like, when first Bo, Levi Mitchell, or Jeff Garcia entered the scene. However, Winnipeg does have the edge when it comes to the running back, especially with Brady Oliveira and the offensive line making some holes. So that could spin the game in favor for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, especially if it's a close game and let's say if Winnipeg might be trying to protect the lead late in the game. I think it was Stevie Scott the third. Montreal has actually struggled when it comes to the running game all season. So if there is a weakness that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers can exploit, is leaning on their running game. Well, the defense, well, it's all Montreal. I think they're stacked. You know, they got Darnell Sankey, Eddie Berglund, Dewan Kotoy, or not, Ty guy. So I'm going to say Montreal is stacked all on defense, even despite with an aging Willie Jefferson for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So some say the defense wins championships. Well, when Montreal is stacked on defense. When it comes to special teams, it's a push for kickers. I mean, Sergio Castillo, Maltos Diaz, they both proven they're accurate and kick, 50 plus yards, field goals. So I'm not worried about kicking game on the other side. Then the return game, well, it depends if James Letcher Jr. plays for Montreal, but Trey Vavell, one of the rookies, and I think he's actually up for Rookie of the Year for Winnipeg, has sprung on the scene. That could give Winnipeg an edge in the return game. So that's all I have for special teams. So now let's take a look at, I streamlined a little more this season, this team will win if. I just simply going to say if Montreal win, if Davis Alexander continues his winning streak as starting quarterback and being able to take advantage of his receivers, so they don't have to lean on the run game as much. And I'm going to say Winnipeg will win if, let's say, if the run game pulls through and maybe get some special teams play that helps them out. So now the weather forecast, well, considering the game is outside, they were forecasting a high of 11, mainly cloudy in Montreal. And I say, considering now we're into November, it's decent weather. And then a low of 2, mainly cloudy. They were saying it could be windy, so that could play a role in this game. But not forecasting any rain or snow the last I checked on Environment Canada. So weather won't be as much of a factor. So now the last part of the video is my prediction. Who do I think is going to win the East semifinal to take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats next week at this time? And then I give my confidence in that pick. So my smart bulbs will now take on the show behind me. So if I pick the Montreal Alouettes to win, this would be the Montreal Alouettes colors. Or if I think the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are looking to make history and potentially go into the Grey Cup at home. Interesting is, let's say if Winnipeg goes all the way, do they get to keep at least their own locker rooms, even though they'll be the East team? So this is the Winnipeg Blue Bomber colors. So do I have Montreal or Winnipeg? Montreal or Winnipeg? Who is going to be taking on the Hamilton Tiger Cats next week? Let's make my decision. I'm going to say, despite the fact that Winnipeg was 2-0 in the season series, I did footnote it on factors in that. I think the Alouettes de Montreal will be advancing to take on the Tiger Cats de Hamilton at Tim Hortons Field. Still learning, but I know that they like to structure their sentences differently. But I think the Montreal Alouettes will win this one. I'll give a score of 32 to 24 and give 65% confidence that I think the Montreal Alouettes will win and advance to the East Final to take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I'm just going to say Montreal is the better team. They're more stacked on offense and defense when it comes to Davis Alexander and the receivers. If they all show up, I'm going to say, especially if Montreal gets off to a fast start, I like Montreal's chances of winning this game, and the fact that it gets a very boisterous crowd, as I experienced when I was in Montreal last month to take on when my Stampeders, the Calgary, were there. That's what they said when they first introduced my team, but I'm just hoping for a good game overall. So, who do you think is going to take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats next week between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Montreal Alouettes? In a separate video, I'll break down the West semifinal as the BC Lions will be taking on my Calgary Stampeders. Will I have an objective, open view in that one, or you think I'm going to be biased and say Calgary's going to win? You'll have to find out in that video. So I want to close out. If you want to follow along this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you've hit like, subscribe. I have my other social media links down in the description below. So I'm going to say enjoy the CFL Playoffs and bring it home tonight, Blue Jays, for the World Series in Game 7. And I'll see you in the next video, which I'm going to say, if you're watching this, it will be the West semifinal preview when I'll break down that video. So I'll see you then.